Hey friends, Jewel back with another super cool astrology video. And I wanted to talk about the composite Venus opposing Uranus, excuse me, and why this shows superficial differences and some social differences as well. So, you two are very, very different if we have this in a composite chart. Very different looks, temperaments usually, careers, interests, but somehow it works. Two people who are entirely different but make it work to their advantage and don't get hung up on the ways that those differences can create friction. They don't create friction. They create a sense of fascination or pride or fun between two people. So we see two people, usually in romantic relationships, differences create friction. Differences create instability. We're not actually looking for our clone. We think we are. We think that we want one of those relationships where we never have any disagreements and everything is great and we have sex 50,000 times a day, and we're actually looking for something much more complex than that. And that brings us a certain amount of opportunity for insight. And then we fight against it because we're so fun. We're such a fun species. Animals just look at us and I'm sure that they're quite laughing. So we have two people in this case that are taking their differences and having some fun with that. They are there's some kind of a positive spin that goes on here. So they don't mind that the other is so different because it creates some of the magic between the two of them. Their differences really open the door to being able to learn from each other, for more possibilities within the relationship. And this is usually not an unstable connection. Intuitively, you would look at it and say, that's obviously not going to work. Well, it usually does when we have this one, unless one or both people are highly, highly filled with Saturn. If you have a lot of expectations that you're going to be or should be Ward and June Cleaver, or have a very traditional relationship where the other person has, wants the same level of entertainment, socioeconomic opportunities, then this may not be one that you enjoy. Because this one does imply possibility, and people that have a lot of plans, meaning that they see, they have a lot of expectations. They have a lot of attachment to the outcome of things. How does it turn out? And then they judge whether or not it was a success based on, did it turn out the way I had planned or that I wanted to turn out? And that will determine their judgment about whether or not one thing or another was a success. They don't examine it on its own. So if we've got that going on, that can make somebody back away from this particular aspect. But usually when we have this, you like it. And it's one of the things that creates just a real fun bond between two people. So it's kind of a genie and the master type of deal. You see two very, very different people. Or Dharma and Greg. Do you remember that one from the 90s where we had the hippie girl and the straight-laced business guy? Sometimes we can see this, I see this frequently in composite charts where we have an age difference where the female is the older person and is wanting to know if the differences that we're seeing between the two of them is something that can possibly work. And if we have an otherwise functioning composite chart, this opposition is a yes, it can. So we value differences in the relationship, and the differences are typically superficial. If you look deeper, yes, we have different interests. Yes, we have different looks. Yes, we may be a different age. Yes, we may come from completely different backgrounds. But there's a great deal in common where it counts, generally, with this particular opposition. But there's a great tolerance for what isn't the same. So you get a lot of the best of both worlds with this particular aspect. So differences, and those differences aren't necessarily complementary, but they find it charming. It adds to the magic of the relationship, and there isn't this expectation between them that they should be the same, and therefore their differences are deemed as a failure. We're looking at that very differently when we have this opposition. So if you see this one, don't fear it. Definitely look at the natal charts and see, what is someone's capacity for possibility? What is their penchant for being attached to their plans or ideas or their preconceived notions? And that will give you a good baseline for determining whether or not this one is going to work for both people. But usually when we see this one, it's a go because of the amount of tolerance and fun and effervescence that it contributes to a relationship. And it also doesn't typically indicate unconventional sexuality. You would think it does. Usually that's going to be Mars-Uranus aspects in a composite chart. Not always, but this one doesn't in itself indicate that it's an open relationship, or that can contribute to that overall look, or that overall theme between two people. But in itself, it's generally not one that's going to indicate automatically a homosexual relationship with. And people don't really understand that homosexuality is not easy to see in astrology, because the alignments that show same-sex attractions are very much present both in straight people's charts and gay people's charts. So it's a really tough call, and you really need to speak to the person in question to know. So this in itself does not indicate a homosexual relationship. You actually see this more, again, in the composite charts where we have an age difference or a cultural difference, and the female is the one that has either the older person, or somehow has some kind of socioeconomic upper hand in the relationship. So I hope this was helpful. If it was, please subscribe to my channel. You can find me on the internet at truthandaspectastrology.com, and on Facebook and on Instagram at truthandaspectastrology. Yes, I do private consultation. I am mainly a relationship and intimacy astrologer, but I interpret all types of charts. And I'll be back super soon with more super cool videos. Bye-bye.